The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary, who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." The Gospel of the Lord.
With our reading from Martha and Mary, or about Martha and Mary, we've heard this many times. We know kind of the meaning behind it. I was thinking of something that happened in my family 15 or 20 years ago. My grandfather was getting very close to the end of his life. He was in hospice care. It was a great gift, a great privilege. The job I was working was already kind of wrapping up anyways, so I left that. I was out here and I went back to California, and I was able to be with my grandparents that last month of my grandfather's life. And I remember, well, lots of things, but my grandfather in particular, or both of them really, were very good at following precise instructions from the doctors, perhaps to an obsessive point. My grandfather, I loved him. He read someplace, in some authoritative place, that a certain some element or mineral that the body needs, you get a sufficient amount in 13 almonds. So we're pretty sure that he counted out 13 almonds every day for years. He denied it, but we didn't completely believe him. But he was also, even though he was in many ways great health, he, at some point the numbers show that he was pre-diabetic. I don't know all what that means, but he went to a very good diet to help bring that down. And he kept his numbers pretty much level for years. And of course, if Grandpa's doing it, the whole family's kind of conscious of, okay, he has this thing here and we're going to do it this way and we're not going to have as much of this and all that. Well, we were very good and conscious of that. But then when he was dying, he didn't have much of an appetite. He was sick. He was lying in bed. And I remember we were talking and discussing what can we make for him to eat that would fit this diet and he would find enjoyable and eat, because we're worried he's not getting enough nutrition. And it required one of the hospice nurses to come in and say, "He's dying. He could eat whatever he wants to eat." We're like, yeah, that's completely obvious now that it was presented. Like, what does it matter about his diabetic numbers? They're not going to go really bad anyways in a couple weeks. If the only thing he has a taste for is ice cream, that's much better than nothing. Okay. And I was thankful for that they were able to point out something completely obvious. We had been focused so much on the specific things, I have a feeling kind of like Martha was, that we lost sight of the bigger thing. The person that we were trying to serve and love, my grandfather. How are we going to help him, this man who's in a difficult point and he's dying and he has a low appetite? How do we help him? Not the diet. We're not serving the diet, we're serving the man. We can do this in many different ways, and I think this is what Martha fell into. And it's not all bad, obviously, right? She was doing it partly for the right reasons, but she lost sight of things. An interesting experiment I think we could do is imagine if at one point when Martha comes and complains to Jesus, "My sister isn't doing anything to help, can you tell her to help?" And rather than how he responded, we can imagine Jesus saying, "Okay, but Martha, I want you to sit here. Mary, you go into the kitchen. We're going to have you swap places." Imagine what that would be. If you were just watching, if you just popped your head in, it may look the same, just a different woman sitting there, but it would look the same. But if we listened, I think we would find out pretty quickly that the problem was not so much what they were doing, but where their hearts were. I have a feeling Mary, if she did that, she would say, okay, well, the master whom I love asked me to go into the kitchen and prepare some things. Very readily, I will happily do that. It's an act of love, an act of obedience to serve someone whom I love. And she would do it, and she would probably go and look at everything that her sister had been preparing and say, like, no, we don't need to do this. This is ridiculous. And this, okay, right, I'll do this with great love, but quickly, and I'll bring it out. And she would do it as an act of love for the one she loves, Jesus. I have a feeling Martha would be sitting there anxiously. She would be looking back into the kitchen and like, Mary, remember there's this thing, bring that out. And on the fork you're looking for is over there. And oh, remember there's something in the oven, don't let it burn. And you can imagine this, right? And I imagine also as Jesus is speaking to her, perhaps about the last journey that he took and the things that he was able to do and how people responded to him, she'd be, do you need more water? No, okay, you got more water. Do you want something else to drink? We have some, Mary, can you get something else for him to drink? And she wouldn't be listening. I wouldn't be surprised if she would be interrupting him. He would want to be sharing something and she wouldn't be able to listen because she's has to serve just right. A priest at the seminary told us something that I remember. I'm not planning on doing that here, but I think there's some truth to it. He was at a parish in a different state, and he saw a need to put in basically term limits for people that or for the volunteers, especially those in charge of different ministries. You could serve for 2 years or 3, but you only could serve that 3rd year if you're training your replacement. And he had a very particular reason for this. At his parish, there was they did some sort of Thanksgiving turkey dinner kind of thing every year. And there was one woman who was in charge, and she'd been doing it for 25 years. It was her Thanksgiving dinner. She made sure the turkeys turned out just right. But she also complained that she never had any volunteers. She had to do it all herself, and it was really exhausting. There were also in the parish lots of people who had volunteered once, who complained that she was like a dictator in the kitchen. It had to be perfect, just the right way. And so she was micromanaging everything, making sure everything was done just perfect. I think he correctly diagnosed the problem. This woman was very well-meaning. She was trying to do something good for the poor whom they were serving. Good. But she was so focused on the job, and she, I think, put her identification, almost her value, on doing this job perfectly, that she forgot the bigger picture. She was doing this, or was supposed to be doing this, out of love for the people that she was going to be serving the dinner to. And in order for that really to work, it had to start by loving the coworkers that were in the kitchen. How are you going to not love your workers, fellow workers, if you're trying to love the people you're working to serve? I know of at least one monastery, and I'm sure this is not unusual to them, where they recognize this issue, and they also have a sort of term limit type of thing. And there may be one monk who's working in the guest house, bringing in, welcoming guests, and he may do a great job with that, but after a couple of years, like, okay, it's time to change, we're going to have you in the kitchen. Oh, you don't cook very well. Well, that is tough for you and for the rest of the monastery, but you're going to be in the kitchen for a while. Do the best you can. Because they recognize that we can get an unhealthy pride in doing a job really well. And lose sight that, okay, great, so you're running this particular job really well. So what? Are you growing in holiness? Are you loving your fellow brother monks? Are you loving our Lord more and more each day? No? Then that job is in the way. We need to get rid of it. And so they would move them, and they may move them into the kitchen where they're not very good. So they have a wonderful chance to learn some humility and detachment. Yes, you want to, in a sense, pour yourself into the responsibilities of the jobs you have, but there should also be a sort of detachment. Someone else can do this. The purpose of it is to feed the brothers in the monastery. If someone else is going to do it, great. The brothers whom I love are getting fed. That's what matters. I'm going to go do something else and serve the community in a different way. And they may have the opportunity for a little bit of good mortification as they're all eating inferior food for this period of time. I want you to think about it, though, yourself. Have you fallen into some of these traps where you're identified maybe too much or in an unhealthy way a particular job or a particular responsibility or a particular thing that you want done just right? Does it need to be done just right? Why do you want it to be done just right? Is it out of love of God, or is it for some lesser reason? Let's look at our lives and see how is it that God is calling us to love him and our neighbor more perfectly.